Black woman barred from first class. She returns owning the whole plane. Imagine stepping into an airport with confidence, your first-class ticket clutched in hand, only to be told you do not belong. This is the story of Aisha Carter, a determined black woman with a heart full of ambition and a lifetime of being told she can't. But fate has a way of turning tragedy into triumph. In a single day, marked by humiliation and shocking twists, Aisha's world shifts from heartbreak to unimaginable success. Buckle up and prepare for a dramatic journey that begins at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport and leads to a triumphant finale no one saw coming. Aisha Carter had been counting down the days to her long-anticipated flight, like a kid awaiting their birthday. She wasn't typically one to splurge, but the chance to experience first-class comfort had been a dream she nurtured since childhood. The idea of stretching out in a plush seat, savoring warm towels and sipping chilled champagne while others were cramped in economy felt like the pinnacle of achievement. It was more than a luxury. It was a symbol of how far she had come, both personally and professionally. Raised by a single mother in a modest neighborhood in Atlanta, Aisha knew struggle from an early age. Every penny had to be stretched, every meal carefully planned. Though money was scarce, love and determination were never in short supply. Her mother, Denise, had instilled in her the belief that with resilience and integrity, she could break any barrier. So when Aisha's online business designing plus-sized fashionable clothing took off, the first thing she did, right after paying her mother's overdue bills, was treat herself to a first-class ticket. The flight would take her to a major conference in Los Angeles, where she hoped to forge connections to expand her brand. Little did she know the simple dream of sitting in first class would soon spiral into a battle for dignity. The swirling buzz of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport greeted Aisha with vibrant, controlled chaos. Traveling was second nature to her. Yet this morning she felt a renewed sense of excitement dancing in her chest. While pulling her sleek roller bag behind her, she took in the sea of travelers hustling to their gates. Some scrolled on their phones, others sipped coffee or huddled around departure screens. Everyone, including Aisha, was on a journey. She headed to Terminal S, where she would board her flight on Delta Airlines. The large digital clock overhead read 7:05 a.m., giving her plenty of time to check in, grab a latte, and then find her gate. Aisha's phone pinged a reminder to complete an urgent email to one of her biggest clients before takeoff. She mentally noted she would handle that once she settled in the lounge. As she navigated past security, she couldn't help the bubble of pride welling in her chest. This was a different experience than all those times she stood in never-ending lines for economy class. Now there was a special lane for first-class passengers, something she had never experienced before. To her, it felt like a testament to her hard work. The day was off to a promising start, but storm clouds loomed on the horizon. After a seamless security check, Aisha made her way to the Delta Sky Club lounge. She had always heard about the cushy chairs and complimentary snacks, but actually stepping into that oasis was a surreal moment. Soft lighting, fresh flowers on the tables, and impeccable service greeted her. A hostess smiled warmly. "Welcome, Miss Carter. May I see your boarding pass, please?" Aisha handed it over, brimming with anticipation for her first taste of the lounge's infamous omelette station. But there was a slight hesitation as the hostess examined her ticket. Her expression shifted as though confusion or doubt crossed her mind. But it was gone in a flash. "Everything seems in order," she said, handing the pass back and stepping aside. Aisha chalked it up to a momentary glitch and moved on, grabbing a seat near a window. Aisha couldn't stop smiling. She felt unstoppable. This was what success felt like. She arranged her bag beside her and plugged in her laptop, ready to dispatch that overdue email. Moments later, a lounge staff member approached her, wearing a courteous but cautious expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but could I check your ticket again?" he asked. Unbeknownst to Aisha. This was the first sign of trouble. Aisha handed over her ticket again, her stomach clenching in sudden apprehension. Why did they need to check it twice? The staff member examined it for what felt like an uncomfortable length of time, furrowing his brows. Finally, he gave a terse nod and handed it back. "Thank you, ma'am," he said stiffly, then turned on his heel and left. Her heart pounded. A prickle of unease trickled through her. Was there an issue with the ticket? Had something gone wrong with her reservation? She checked the itinerary on her phone, verifying everything looked correct. Same flight number, same seat, same departure time. She silently told herself not to worry. Possibly a glitch in the system or some random auditing process. But as she watched the staff member whispering something to a colleague across the lounge, both of them giving her furtive glances, an unsettling feeling came over her. She tried to refocus on her work, but a fear gnawed at her from inside, telling her that something was off. It made no sense, yet the tension in the room had changed. Aisha was used to stares. She was a tall, elegantly dressed black woman, in a space not typically associated with people from her background. But this felt heavier, more suspicious. Aisha decided it was best to leave the lounge early and head to the gate before anything else could disrupt her mood. As she approached gate S17, she noticed a small group of fellow first-class passengers quietly waiting. There were no issues, as she confirmed her seat assignment on the overhead monitor. 2A in first class, exactly as she'd arranged. She exhaled a sigh of relief. Moments later, a gate agent with a tight-lipped expression approached. "May I see your boarding pass?" she asked. Aisha complied, trying to quell a wave of annoyance. That was the third time in less than an hour. She watched the agent's eyes flick from the boarding pass to her, then back again, as though trying to fit mismatched puzzle pieces together. "This is a first-class ticket," the agent said, her voice tinged with condescension. Aisha nodded. "Yes, I'm aware." The agent narrowed her eyes. "It's unusual for someone to have this kind of ticket if it wasn't purchased through official channels." Alarm bells rang in Aisha's mind. She responded firmly. "I paid for my ticket in full and legally." A short pause followed, thick with tension. Finally, the agent let out a dismissive huff and walked away without even an apology. Unease and anger warred inside Aisha. Little did she know this was only the beginning. The soft chime of the intercom signaled the start of pre-boarding. Aisha rose to her feet, brushing invisible lint from her blazer. She clutched her boarding pass with pride and walked toward the priority boarding lane marked first class. Sky priority. The moment felt symbolic, almost sacred. All her life she had watched others board, early businessmen, polished executives, luxury travelers, but now it was her turn. She had earned this. She smiled at the gate agent as she stepped forward, but the smile wasn't returned. Instead, the agent, Patricia Miles, according to her name badge, narrowed her eyes as Aisha handed over the ticket. Patricia took it with stiff fingers and scanned it with unnecessary scrutiny. Her lips pursed. A faint frown creased her brow. Aisha waited, puzzled. Then Patricia spoke loudly, too loudly. "I'll need you to step aside for additional verification," she said, her tone clipped and impersonal. Her voice cut through the hum of the terminal like a knife. Nearby passengers turned their heads. "I'm sorry," Aisha asked, her voice quiet but firm. "Is there an issue? We've had reports of ticket fraud recently," Patricia said briskly. "It's just a precaution." Aisha's stomach dropped. Her mouth went dry. She could feel eyes on her now, watching, judging. "I assure you," she said slowly, "I paid for this ticket in full. I booked it through Delta's official site weeks ago." Patricia didn't even look up. "Please, step aside, ma'am." Aisha obeyed, her chest burning with embarrassment. She stood to the side, painfully aware of each second ticking by. A couple in matching travel gear whispered behind their hands. A child stared openly. Aisha forced herself to stand, tall, chin lifted, but inside shame and rage tangled together like barbed wire. "I'm not trying to cause a scene," she said after a beat. "But I've done nothing wrong." Patricia responded with silence, then waved the next passenger forward without even acknowledging Aisha's words. The slight was deliberate. Aisha clenched her fists. "I deserve to know why I'm being singled out." Patricia's expression finally cracked her brow, arched eyes hardening. "Just wait there," she said sharply, as if scolding a child. The words stung more than Aisha expected. Her breath hitched. Her face felt hot. But she refused to let tears fall. Not here. Not now. Passengers continued to board around her, as if nothing was wrong, but everything was wrong. She glanced toward the nearby monitors, then at the line of travelers flowing past her, each one granted the respect she had been denied. Her dream of a peaceful, luxurious flight had been punctured, its joy draining away. And deep inside, something shifted. This wasn't about one ticket anymore. It was about being told once again, in front of strangers, that she didn't belong, that she wasn't enough. But Aisha Carter had clawed her way through worse. And in this moment, humiliated and burning, she made a quiet vow. They picked the wrong woman. Several onlookers began murmuring amongst themselves. One couple, an older pair who looked affluent, cast disapproving glances at Patricia's behavior. A younger man in a business suit who had just scanned his own first-class ticket paused momentarily, as if he wanted to intervene. Aisha caught his gaze, and he nodded sympathetically, but proceeded into the jet bridge. Finally, a middle-aged black woman named Gloria stepped out of the line. She held a first-class ticket and sported a crisp navy pantsuit. "Excuse me," she said, voice tinged with outrage. "This is unacceptable. I've been watching how you treated this passenger, and I want to know why she's being singled out." Patricia stiffened, clearly not expecting to be confronted. She tried to dismiss Gloria with a curt shake of the head. "This does not concern you," she snapped. Gloria pressed on. "It does concern me if you're treating her differently, because of assumptions you have no right to make." Aisha felt a wave of gratitude and relief. At least one person saw the injustice. However, Patricia's eyes only narrowed further. "Security will handle this." She threatened, picking up the radio at her side. The tension was climbing to a fever pitch, and it seemed like the entire gate area had come to a standstill. Aisha braced herself for whatever would come next. 2 airport security officers arrived, alerted by Patricia's call. Their posture was stern, their faces neutral as they approached Aisha. She stood tall, refusing to show the swirl of dread she felt inside. After all, she had nothing to hide. Patricia quickly relayed her version of events, claiming the ticket might be fraudulent. One of the officers, a tall man with a calm demeanor, turned to Aisha. "May I see some identification? And your ticket, ma'am?" he asked politely. Aisha handed them over. Heart pounding, Gloria hovered nearby, arms folded across her chest as she stood in silent solidarity. "Could you please explain why this particular passenger's ticket is suspect?" She piped in, her pointed stare slicing through Patricia's flimsy reasoning. The officer scanned Aisha's ID and typed some information into a handheld device. The seconds felt like hours. Finally, the device beeped, and the officer frowned, then showed the screen to his partner. After a brief exchange, the tall officer nodded and handed everything back to Aisha. "Everything is valid," he stated loud enough for bystanders to hear. He turned to Patricia. "The ticket is legitimate. We see no issue here." A hush fell over the gate area, followed by a collective intake of breath. Patricia's face stiffened. The inevitable seeds of karma had begun to sprout. You'd think that being vindicated in front of a crowd with security officers confirming her boarding pass and ID were completely legitimate would have ended the ordeal. For a few precious seconds, Aisha believed it had. Her shoulders sagged slightly in relief as the taller officer handed her back her documents and said loud and clear for all to hear, "Everything checks out, ma'am. You're good to go." There were murmurs of agreement and a few quiet claps. Gloria smiled at Aisha and whispered, "Told you." But Patricia wasn't finished, still standing stiffly behind her gate podium. She stared at Aisha like she was a stain that refused to come clean. Her lips pressed into a tight line. Then with chilling calm she spoke. "Even if your documents are valid," she said, pausing dramatically, "I'm not comfortable with her flying in first class on this flight." The words dropped like a bomb. Aisha blinked. I'm sorry. What did you say?" "I don't feel safe allowing you to board in first class," Patricia repeated louder, this time addressing both Aisha and the surrounding crowd. "As a gate agent, I reserve the right to deny boarding to any passenger I believe could cause a disruption or pose a potential security risk." There was a stunned silence. It wasn't just the passengers nearby who reacted. Airport staff, children, business travelers all turned their heads. A man holding a Starbucks cup let it lower slowly from his lips. Someone gasped audibly, "You've got to be kidding me," Gloria muttered, stepping closer. "Are you saying that because I'm Black Aisha?" asked her voice, sharp, cutting through the thickening tension. "Because I've been nothing but polite. You've had security. Check me, they cleared me. And now you feel unsafe. I'm following protocol," Patricia replied. Her voice clipped. "No, you're following prejudice," Gloria snapped, now fully facing her. "She has a valid ticket. You had her humiliated, interrogated, and publicly embarrassed. Now that there's no excuse left, you invent one." Several other passengers voiced their agreement. "This is wrong. She's got every right to that seat. I saw the whole thing. She didn't do a damn thing." Patricia's eyes darted around the crowd, clearly unnerved by the shift in mood. Her face flushed a deep red. Still she stood firm. Aisha took a slow breath, every nerve in her body on fire. She didn't want to cry. She wouldn't give Patricia the satisfaction. "I'm not going anywhere until I speak to someone in charge," she said clearly. "You don't get to deny me service based on your personal bias." Patricia hesitated for a beat. Then, with visible irritation, she picked up the intercom handset. "Supervisor to gate S17. Immediate assistance requested," she barked, barely masking her fury. Aisha didn't flinch. She crossed her arms and stood tall, refusing to move. The tension in the air was electric. Cell phones were out now. People were recording. This wasn't just a dispute. It was a moment, a reckoning, and Aisha intended to see it through. "Call your supervisor." Aisha demanded, her voice clear and unwavering. Patricia stared at her stunned. "I'm not going anywhere until I speak to someone in charge," Aisha added. The gate agent's face darkened with fury, but she reached for the intercom phone and pressed a button. "Supervisor to gate S17. Immediate assistance required," she said, her voice quivering with annoyance. While they waited, Gloria placed a reassuring hand on Aisha's shoulder. "Good for you," she murmured. "Don't let them intimidate you. The world needs more people who stand up." Aisha nodded, grateful for the support. In the tense silence, the small group of onlookers remained, some filming the altercation on their phones. You could practically taste the collective shock and indignation in the air. 1 or 2 passengers slipped away to catch connecting flights, but the majority lingered, hoping to see justice served. A middle-aged supervisor appeared, badge glinting under fluorescent lights, his expression one of polite curiosity. Patricia pounced immediately. "We have a problem, passenger," she snarled. "I want her removed." The supervisor lifted an eyebrow and turned to Aisha. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked calmly. Aisha inhaled slowly. "I've been accused of fraud, humiliated, and now I'm being denied a seat I legally purchased." This moment would decide everything. The gate area was humming with tension by the time the supervisor arrived, dressed in a crisp navy suit with a polished Delta badge clipped to his chest. He carried himself with the calm authority of someone who had handled dozens of travel crises, but perhaps never one quite like this. "Supervisor Ron Bradley," he introduced himself briskly, surveying the crowd before turning to Patricia. "What seems to be the issue?" Patricia immediately stepped forward, arms folded and voice high with urgency. "This passenger is being uncooperative. I believe her ticket may be fraudulent. She's escalated the situation, and I'm requesting removal." Aisha took a sharp breath. She couldn't believe it. After everything, Patricia was still spinning her narrative. Her stomach churned with disbelief and anger, but she refused to let emotion get the best of her. "Sir," Aisha said clearly, cutting through Patricia's performance. "My name is Aisha Carter. I purchased a first-class ticket legally. I've passed all security checks, and both your staff and airport police have verified my ID and boarding pass. The only disruption here is that your agent refuses to let me board because she's uncomfortable with me." The crowd, now larger, watched with rapt attention. Phones were still recording. A mother held her child closer. A businesswoman shook her head in dismay. Gloria stood beside Aisha, arms crossed, silent but seething. Ron nodded slowly, then held out his hand. "May I see your ticket and ID, Ms. Carter?" Wordlessly, Aisha handed them over. He studied them carefully, then stepped aside to make a call on his cell. The minutes that followed dragged on like hours. Every second felt saturated with meaning. This was it. The moment where someone in power could either correct a wrong or let it slide. Finally, Ron returned a new tone in his voice, measured but apologetic as Carter. "I've confirmed everything with both our ticketing department and Delta Corporate. Your boarding pass is valid. Your ID is valid. And there is no reason whatsoever you should be denied access to your first-class seat." Aisha let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. A murmur of approval moved through the crowd like a wave. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely steady. Ron turned to Patricia, his entire demeanor shifting from polite to firm. "Patricia," he said sharply, "please join me in my office after this flight departs. We need to discuss your conduct." Patricia's jaw dropped. You're taking her side." "I'm taking the side of truth," Ron replied, not raising his voice but somehow making it echo. There was a smattering of applause from nearby passengers. Gloria gave Aisha a thumbs up. Someone whispered, "Finally." And still Aisha felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. Yes, she had won this round. But why had it come to this? Why had she needed a public scene, security, and a crowd of witnesses just to be treated fairly? As the line began to move again, Ron gestured for her to board. "We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience." Miss Carter. She nodded, gathered her things and walked toward the jet bridge. Vindicated, yes, but changed forever. Aisha walked down the jet bridge, her heart hammering. She wondered how Patricia would retaliate. Did she have allies among the cabin crew? But as Aisha stepped through the airplane door, a friendly flight attendant greeted her with a warm smile, ushering her toward the wide, cushioned seat in row 2. Sinking into her seat, Aisha tried to let the tension drain from her shoulders. She took a breath, reminding herself that she'd done nothing wrong. Still, her mind buzzed. The entire gate area fiasco was captured on multiple phones. She had glimpsed people filming. Her phone was already lighting up with text messages from Gloria, who had apparently managed to get her number through a quick chat. I can't believe that just happened. One message read, "Let's talk when we land." The plane filled up quickly. The same business-suited passenger who had hesitated earlier now sat across the aisle. He raised his eyebrows in a silent show of support, which gave Aisha a slight smile. Moments later, the plane door sealed. Flight attendants went through their routine safety announcements. Aisha exhaled deeply. She might have won a battle, but her anger still simmered. She suspected this was a story that wouldn't simply fade away at 30,000 feet. Shortly after takeoff, the cabin service began. Aisha tried to lose herself in the moment, the luxurious legroom, the promise of a gourmet breakfast, and an in-flight movie she'd been wanting to see. Yet the events at the gate clung to her mind like a stubborn shadow. She glanced at her phone, noticing a flurry of social media notifications. Apparently, some of the gate footage had already been posted online. Her seatmate, the business traveler, quietly introduced himself as Marcus. "You doing okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Aisha nodded, though she didn't quite feel okay. Marcus leaned closer. "I saw what happened. That was not right. I recorded part of it. If you need any witness statements, just let me know." She thanked him sincerely. Before they could continue, a flight attendant arrived with a tray of fresh fruit pastries, and the beverage list Aisha ordered an orange juice, her appetite dampened by the morning's events. Out the window, clouds stretched in an endless expanse. In some ways, they were a metaphor for the unknown that lay ahead, vast, unpredictable, and potentially stormy. Aisha wondered how this ordeal might affect her professional conference, and more unsettlingly, the rest of her life. The flight landed at Los Angeles International Airport on schedule. Normally, Aisha would have been elated to step off the plane into the sunny California air, ready to chase new business opportunities. But as she wheeled her suitcase through the terminal, her mind was still stuck on that humiliating experience in Atlanta. Making her way to the car rental area, she spotted Gloria waiting near the baggage carousel. Aisha, Gloria called out, waving her over. The two women met with a warm hug, even though they were practically strangers. In the swirling crowd of LAX, they formed a small island of empathy. "Are you heading to the same conference?" Aisha asked Gloria. Nodded. "I'm in tech consulting, but I'm also here for some diversity and inclusion panels." "Listen, I'm so sorry about what happened. If you want, we can keep in touch and see if there's any way to, well, make sure Delta or the airport handles this properly." Aisha hesitated, but nodded. "I appreciate that," she said. "Let's definitely talk more." Exchanging phone numbers felt like the start of a supportive friendship, but as Aisha left for her rental car, she couldn't shake the sense that bigger things were at play, that the story of her humiliation had only begun to unfold. The afternoon sun was bright in Los Angeles, but Aisha's phone felt hotter. Buzz after buzz, her notifications piled up. Videos of the gate confrontation at Hartsfield-Jackson had found their way to Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. People were sharing, commenting, debating. Hashtags like "flying while black" and "first class for all" were trending. Scores of strangers were expressing outrage at her treatment, while others threw out skepticism or racist vitriol. Aisha felt overwhelmed reading through the comments, some supportive, some hateful, and many simply shocking. She'd never intended to become a lightning rod for discussions on racial bias in air travel, but here she was. Taking a deep breath, she set her phone aside. She had a conference to focus on. She had to maintain her composure, but her phone refused to stay silent. A call from an unknown number rang through. Against her better judgment, she answered Ms. Carter. A voice asked, "This is Stephanie Miller from CNN. We'd like to get your statement regarding the viral video." Aisha nearly dropped the phone. She'd never in her wildest dreams expected a major news outlet to come calling. She stammered out something about needing time, explaining she was at a business conference. The reporter politely asked her to consider giving an exclusive interview. This was only the beginning of a media firestorm Aisha hadn't bargained for, arriving at the convention center in downtown Aisha tried to keep her head in the game. She was slated to present her plus-size fashion line's upcoming collection to potential investors. For months, she'd worked tirelessly on new designs, brand partnerships, and a marketing strategy aimed at inclusivity. But as she stepped into the grand lobby, every beep of her phone felt like an anchor, dragging her back to Atlanta. Word had spread like wildfire. She caught glimpses of conference attendees, whispering behind their palms, eyes darting toward her. A couple of people even approached, gently inquiring, "Hey, are you that woman from the Delta video?" When she finally reached her booth, her nerves were frayed. She tried to greet potential clients with her usual warmth and professionalism, but it felt forced. One investor, an older man named Jonathan Reeves, asked about the incident directly. "Is it true you were barred from boarding despite a valid ticket?" "That's absolutely atrocious," he said, eyebrows knitting together in concern. "Do you realize how this could benefit your brand? People are rallying behind you." Aisha bristled. The notion of turning her humiliation into a PR opportunity made her skin crawl. But Jonathan's words planted a seed. She wondered if she could spin this negative into a chance to highlight systemic issues and promote her brand's values of representation and respect. Later that evening, Aisha was packing up her display materials when a poised, elegant woman in a lavender blouse approached Ms. Carter. She began extending a manicured hand. "My name is Helena Figueroa. I work for a major entertainment agency." Aisha was caught off guard. "It's nice to meet you," she said, shaking Helena's hand. Helena's direct gaze suggested she wasn't here, just to browse the clothing racks. "I was in the audience for your panel," Helena explained. "You spoke passionately about inclusivity and resilience. Quite inspiring also. I've heard about your unfortunate ordeal. My agency handles public relations, among other things. We'd love to represent you, if you're open to it." Aisha blinked. "Represent me in what capacity?" Helena smiled. "All capacities. Media requests, brand expansion, possibly even a feature on daytime talk shows. The world is interested in your story." It sounded too big, too sudden, but Helena was clearly serious. She handed Aisha a business card. "No pressure. Call if you want to talk. We can help you shape the narrative before it shapes you." Aisha watched Helena disappear into the thinning crowd. Opportunity was knocking, but part of Aisha feared letting the humiliating event define her professional identity. She also knew that ignoring the moment might mean missing a chance to create real change. That night, Aisha tried in vain to sleep in her hotel room, Whenever she closed her eyes, she saw Patricia's face, contorted with anger, felt the humiliating heat of onlookers' stares. She checked her phone sporadically, seeing endless reposts of the video. Some supportive tweets read, "We stand with Aisha Carter. No room for hate." Others spewed venom, claiming she was seeking attention or playing the race card. By dawn, her face was buried in her hands. She was mentally drained. If she accepted Helena's help, she might steer the conversation positively. She could champion diversity, highlight her clothing line, and expose the injustices many black travelers face. But it also meant stepping into a blinding media spotlight. Did she have the emotional stamina to face it? Her phone buzzed again. Gloria's name lit up the screen. "You okay, sis?" The text read. Aisha hesitated, tears pricking her eyes at the simple show of concern. She replied that she was hanging in there, then decided it was time to make a choice. Fear wouldn't dictate her path anymore. She pressed Helena's number. "Helena, it's Aisha," she said, her voice trembling. "I think I'm ready to talk about representation. Let's do it. But on my terms." By the next afternoon, Helena had arranged a remote interview with Stephanie Miller from CNN. Aisha sat in a makeshift studio at her hotel hair and makeup, done by a local glam team Helena had dispatched. She felt a rush of adrenaline as the cameras rolled. Stephanie appeared on the screen, greeting Aisha warmly. "Aisha, thank you for joining us. Your story has resonated with so many viewers. Could you walk us through what happened at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport?" Aisha took a measured breath. She described the gate agent's suspicion, the repeated checks, and Patricia's determination to bar her from boarding. As she recounted the event, she felt her anger returning, but she maintained her composure. Stephanie listened empathetically. "Have you heard from Delta Airlines or the airport authorities since the incident?" Stephanie asked. Aisha shook her head. "Not yet, aside from a generic statement about following policies. But I hope they'll reach out soon. This isn't just about me. It's about a system that often questions our legitimacy." The conversation lasted 15 minutes, but it felt like a marathon by the end. Aisha felt a wave of relief. She'd spoken her truth on national television. She wondered how her words would ripple outward, and whether Delta would step up to the plate or double down. The interview went viral within hours. A portion of the traveling public called for a boycott of Delta, demanding that Patricia be held accountable. Others insisted that corporate policies allowing gate agents this much discretion needed an overhaul. Delta issued a cautious press release stating they were investigating the matter. Meanwhile, Patricia's name leaked online. People scoured her social media, uncovering inflammatory posts and questionable comments that hinted at biases. She became a lightning rod for public outrage. Word spread that Delta had placed her on administrative leave, pending further review. Aisha felt a mixture of validation and sorrow. She never intended to ruin anyone's career, but she also couldn't ignore the blatant discrimination she'd faced. She told Helena that she wanted the emphasis to be on changing discriminatory systems, not just punishing one individual. "This is bigger than Patricia," Aisha said. "It's about treating all customers with dignity, no matter their background." Helena agreed to frame the narrative accordingly. Invitations to speak at diversity panels flooded Aisha's inbox. She juggled these offers with running her clothing brand, feeling both empowered and overwhelmed. The pivot from unknown entrepreneur to public figure was dizzying. Little did she realize her journey was about to take another dramatic turn. A week after the CNN interview, a crisp white envelope appeared in Aisha's mailbox at her Atlanta home, the return address, Delta Airlines corporate headquarters. Curiosity piqued, she tore it open. Inside was a formal letter signed by Harold Bishop, the company's vice president of customer relations. It offered an apology for her experience, along with an invitation to a private meeting to discuss potential partnership opportunities to improve passenger relations. Aisha was stunned. Why would they invite her for a partnership? She immediately called Helena, who responded with enthusiasm. "This is an incredible chance." Helena said they might want you as an advocate for diversity in their corporate training or some brand ambassador role. It could be huge. But Aisha hesitated. "After how they treated me, I'm wary." She admitted, "I don't want to be some token used to gloss over a PR nightmare. I need to ensure it's genuine." Helena assured her that they would negotiate carefully, reminding her that sometimes big corporations do want to make real changes, especially under public scrutiny. After a few days of soul-searching, Aisha decided to accept the meeting. The flight incident had catapulted her into a strange new world, and she was determined to navigate it on her own terms. When Aisha arrived at Delta's headquarters in Atlanta, she was greeted by a courteous receptionist who escorted her to a sleek conference room on the 15th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased sweeping views of the city. It was a room designed to impress, and Aisha felt a flutter of nerves. Inside, Harold Bishop stood to greet her. He was a tall, bespectacled man with salt and pepper hair. Beside him sat a small team of corporate officials, including a stern-faced legal advisor and a polished PR representative. Aisha took a seat at the head of a gleaming wooden table. Helena sat beside her, ready to provide counsel. If needed, Harold began with an apology that sounded well-rehearsed. "We deeply regret your experience, Miss Carter. We want to do better." He explained that Delta was looking to expand its diversity and inclusion initiatives, referencing new training modules and internal audits of staff behavior. Aisha studied his expression carefully. "I'm glad to hear it, but I need to see specifics," she replied. "How do you plan to address the implicit biases that allow situations like mine to happen?" Harold cleared his throat. "We were actually hoping you'd collaborate with us on that, become a consultant of sorts." It was a proposition that had the potential to reshape airline practices or become a corporate whitewash. Which path it would take remained to be seen. The meeting stretched for hours. Aisha asked hard-hitting questions, pressing them on policy changes, staff training, and accountability measures. She wanted specifics. How often would these trainings occur? How would gate agents be held responsible for discriminatory actions? Would Delta commit to transparency by publicly releasing their progress? Harold offered a carefully worded response. "We're still shaping the exact framework, Miss Carter, but we value your input in creating a more equitable customer experience. We want to partner with you to ensure we're meeting travelers' needs." Aisha noted that the corporate team seemed genuinely concerned about the PR crisis, but wasn't entirely sure if they were committed to real cultural change or merely damage control. When Helena hinted that Aisha would require compensation for her consultancy, the legal advisor nodded, saying, "Of course we can discuss a fair arrangement." After the meeting, as Aisha rode the elevator down, her thoughts churned. She could help transform an industry that had historically underserved people who looked like her, or she could end up as a token in a corporate show. The stake was high. Could she risk her credibility for an uncertain promise of change? Driving home, Aisha felt a strong urge to consult the one person whose advice she valued above all others, her mother, Denise. As soon as Aisha stepped into her childhood home, the comforting smell of fried chicken and fresh biscuits enveloped her. Denise met her in the kitchen with a knowing smile. Aisha explained the meeting with Delta, the potential consulting role, and her reservations. Denise listened quietly, hands busy kneading dough, but eyes locked on her daughter's face. When Aisha finished, Denise washed her hands and spoke softly. "Baby, you've always stood up for what's right. Don't lose that voice. If you do this, make sure it's on terms that let you speak your truth." Aisha sighed, the weight of decisions pressing on her. "I'm just scared they'll use me." "Mom," Denise shook her head. "Only if you let them. You have the power." "Aisha, they need you more than you need them." Those words rang in Aisha's ears long after she left. For all the noise from the media, lawyers, and public relations gurus, her mother's simple wisdom resonated most. She decided that if Delta wouldn't commit to transparent, measurable changes, she'd walk away. And if they did commit, she'd push for something even bigger than they imagined. A few weeks later, Delta arranged a follow-up meeting in New York City, promising that top executives and diversity officers would be present. Aisha was given a first-class ticket for the flight, ironic considering the fiasco that started it all. She couldn't help but feel uneasy returning to an airport lounge, the memory of gate humiliation still raw. This time, she had the support of Helena, who was traveling with her, along with a small camera crew, to document the experience. As she navigated the first-class lane, the staff was almost excessively polite. Aisha wondered if they recognized her from the viral story. The flight itself was uneventful. She sipped herbal tea, tapped away on her laptop, and finalized her talking points. She would demand mandatory cultural sensitivity, training a robust complaint process for passengers, and regular audits. If Delta balked, she'd walk upon landing. She noticed a message from Gloria. "Good luck. Show them what real justice looks like." Smiling Aisha gathered her courage. She had no idea that this trip would be the pivotal point, leading not just to corporate reforms, but to an outcome so large and unexpected, it would shock even her staunchest supporters. The meeting room on the top floor of Delta's Manhattan headquarters was all glass and gleam floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, while a long, polished table gleamed under recessed lighting. Everything about the space was designed to impress and intimidate. But Aisha Carter sat calmly at one end of the table, Helena by her side, her posture straight and her chin slightly lifted. She wasn't here to be dazzled. Across from her sat 6 high-level Delta executives, including Harold Bishop, and a poised woman in a plum blazer who introduced herself as Simone Holland. Delta's Senior Vice President of Strategy and Innovation. A small stack of documents sat before them, bound and neatly tabbed. Simone leaned forward. "Miss Carter," she began, her voice, "even thank you again for coming. We've reviewed the proposals you sent us. Frankly, they're some of the most thoughtful and forward-thinking plans we've received in a long time." Aisha gave a small nod but said nothing. She wasn't here for flattery. Simone continued, sliding the folder across the table. "Based on those ideas and in recognition of what you've endured and how you've handled it, we'd like to offer you a formal position within our leadership initiative." Helena raised an eyebrow slightly. "What kind of position are we talking about?" "We're launching a new company initiative aimed at overhauling our customer experience with a focus on inclusivity and cultural sensitivity." "We want you," Simone said, locking eyes with Aisha to become Delta's official inclusion ambassador. Aisha blinked, taken aback by the title. Helena remained composed, but her fingers twitched slightly in anticipation. What would that entail exactly? Simone glanced at Harold, then continued. "It's a public-facing leadership role with authority to influence training policies, help design outreach campaigns, and advise our diversity strategy. But there's more." She paused almost for effect, then added, "We're also inviting you to become a stakeholder in a pilot project, a premium subsidiary airline we've quietly been developing. We want your voice in the foundation of it, and we're prepared to offer you an equity share." Silence fell over the table. Aisha felt her breath catch. "You want me to own part of an airline?" she said slowly. "Yes," Simone replied without hesitation. "You'd serve as a founding partner, helping define the identity of the brand. We believe your experience, your integrity, and the message you represent are invaluable to what we're building." The irony was dizzying. The same company that once questioned her, right to board, was now asking her to help build something entirely new, offering her not just a seat at the table but a piece of the table itself. Aisha swallowed hard. Her instincts screamed caution. Was this real change or a strategic PR move? Helena placed a steadying hand on Aisha's arm. "We'll need to review the details thoroughly," she said, her voice cool and professional. "Of course," Simone said smoothly. "Take your time. But we hope you'll consider it. We see this not as a transaction, but as transformation." Aisha stared at the offer before her, from rejection to ownership. This was unprecedented. Stunned, Aisha took a moment to compose herself. She had come prepared to fight for basic reforms, never expecting this level of partnership. But was it genuine? She worried they might simply want to leverage her story to boost their new airline's public image. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. "I need to ensure this is more than a branding move. If I commit, it's because I believe you'll follow through on the changes we've discussed." Simone nodded, sliding a contract across the table. "We're fully committed. You'll see here the details of the equity stake your role in shaping policy and the accountability measures we're willing to enact. We want to set a new industry standard." Aisha's gaze flicked to the pages, teeming with legal jargon. Helena discreetly signaled for them to review it thoroughly before making any decisions. "Of course, we'll need time to go over the contract with our legal team," Helena said, offering a professional smile. Delta's executives agreed. They ended the meeting with handshakes and polite farewells, leaving Aisha in a whirlwind of thoughts. Had she truly come from being barred at the gate to owning a share in an airline? The magnitude of the shift felt surreal, like a dream perched at the edge of reality. After the meeting, Aisha retreated to her hotel suite, wanting solitude. Her mind buzzed with conflicting emotions: excitement, suspicion, gratitude, and even a tinge of fear. She'd never aspired to own part of an airline, let alone shape an entire corporate culture in such a direct way. Helena joined her with a bottle of sparkling cider and 2 glasses. "We should celebrate your success," she said, popping the cork. "But I get the hesitation. Let's think this through carefully." They sat across from each other at a small table by the window, the Manhattan skyline twinkling in the distance. Helena opened the contract, scanning its contents. She muttered points aloud: equity percentages, seat on the advisory board terms for public disclosure of diversity metrics, and more. It's surprisingly thorough, Helena noted. They really are putting a lot on the line, financially and publicly. If they fail to follow through, it'll be a bigger nightmare for them than for you. Aisha stared out at the city lights. "I keep thinking about that day, at the gate," she murmured. "If someone had told me then that I'd be in this position, I would have laughed." She sighed, "But maybe this is the path I'm meant to take." It took another month of back-and-forth negotiations, contract revisions and legal consultations. During that period, Patricia's administrative leave became permanent termination. Delta officially fired her for misconduct, citing multiple complaints that came to light during the investigation. Aisha felt a pang of sympathy, despite everything, but also recognized that accountability was necessary. Finally, on a crisp Monday morning, Aisha and Helena reconvened with Delta's leadership in a final celebratory meeting. Cameras flashed as the parties signed documents, cementing Aisha's role as inclusion ambassador and partial owner of Delta's new subsidiary airline. Yet to be named, she insisted on a seat in strategic discussions, ensuring real power, not just a figurehead title. When the ink dried, Simone and Harold shook Aisha's hand, their smiles tinged with relief. This partnership was a high-risk, high-reward endeavor for everyone involved. For Aisha, it symbolized vindication and the chance to champion marginalized voices on a global stage. Leaving the headquarters, Aisha clutched the final contract to her chest, a surreal euphoria coursing through her veins. She could practically hear her mother's voice, celebrating, see Gloria's proud grin, and feel the support of countless people who had rallied around her story. She had fought for a seat, and now she had an entire plane. Months later, the maiden flight of the new subsidiary airline took off from Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Aisha sat in the front row of a brand new plane, sporting a sleek livery that combined Delta's familiar logo with a bold statement on inclusion. In the seat pocket, a card outlined the airline's values: open skies for all. A direct result of Aisha's input, Gloria was on board. As a special guest, beaming with pride, Helena was there too. Coordinating media interviews, Aisha had also invited her mother, Denise, who gripped her daughter's hand as the engines roared to life. "You did it, baby," she whispered, tears shining in her eyes. Aisha closed her own eyes, remembering the day she'd been so publicly humiliated. She felt a wave of gratitude for everyone who had stepped up to defend her. She also felt a renewed sense of responsibility. The airline's success would hinge on genuine fairness, on living up to the promises they had made as the plane soared into the sky. Aisha opened her laptop, heart pounding with the weight and thrill of possibility. She reminded herself that this was not just her success, but a victory for anyone who had ever felt shut out of first class, for anyone who had been told they didn't belong. Now they had the wings to fly higher than ever before. And there you have it, the astonishing story of how a single act of discrimination turned into a triumph so grand it changed an entire airline and elevated one determined woman to unexpected heights. Aisha Carter's journey reminds us that standing up for yourself can spark a powerful shift in the world around you. Through moments of heartbreak, resilience, and breathtaking surprises, she transformed a painful encounter into an incredible opportunity. If you enjoyed this riveting tale and believe it carries an important lesson about justice, dignity, and the power of perseverance, please hit that like button, share the video with friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps spread stories that shine a light on courage and possibility. Join us in celebrating Aisha's victory. And remember, the sky is never the limit when you stand up for what's right.